Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steves! Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue think this slate, dropping unrealistic mags, 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, look on to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way. Sports content for the reals to fill the day. Good afternoon, folks. It is Tuesday, January 20th, 2026, and we are here for episode 44 of the 3-Point Blitz, folks. It's been close to a year since this thing started, and we're still going strong. I remember we did the very first episode on a Sunday. This was like late February, early March last year we did it. We did it, as always, on my channel and the Hardcore Sports Network. Then we did it on Mondays for a few episodes. Now we're officially set on Tuesday at noon. In all those episodes, we did have one episode where I was joined by Coach Ed Gladney during the middle of the summer when the biggest thing going active at the time was the WNBA. We talked a little bit about the rise of women's sports. And in that, I ranted about domestic abuse by athletes, where me and Coach had a discussion on it. And now here we are, getting around NFL playoff time. We're kicking off the rant of the week with a similar situation. Actually, matter of fact, we're talking about the exact same person I mentioned in that rant of the week for episode 18. Folks, Gervonta Tank Davis, who I mentioned in that episode, is at it again with domestic abuse. Now, in this case, though, his most recent felony apparently he happened in October, several months after that episode of the 3-Point Blitz, where me and Coach talked about this guy having a history of abuse with women. Now, here we are again, but this time around, it's not a girlfriend. This time around, it's a former girlfriend. So, now this is 1, 2, 3, 4 incidents of some form of assault in one way or another, either against a girlfriend, former girlfriend, a friend. In some way, shape, or form, this guy has now racked up his 4th assault charge. And this is real dangerous, though, too. The fact that this is a man who, mind you, was following his ex-girlfriend, mind you. So obviously, they had already split up by this point. And Davis reportedly followed her and apparently threatened to kill her. And there's apparently a videotape that has part of it that shows him behaving inappropriately. Matter of fact, this is the same guy who I said has this history. Mind you, had an incident caught on camera at the weigh-in for one of his boxing fights of him grabbing the person by the throat. This was years ago, so we've actually seen video of this man. Now, granted, the throat part is only a small part of the story, but the fact that we've seen that tells you that here's a guy who is capable of assaulting women. We know just from that short video he's capable of doing it. And the fact that his name's been brought up in these situations, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 times in different situations. No, that's the pattern. That's a repetitious pattern that we talked about. And here we are all over again. The reason I bring it up is because it seems like a lot of times domestic abusers, particularly pro athletes who are domestic abusers, regardless of sport, often get a slap on the wrist. In this case in point, the guy we're talking about here, we talked about it back in July, and now here we are in January 2026. We're talking about a separate charge from an incident that occurred 3 months after discussing this. So the problem with athletes getting a slap on the wrist is they're more likely to repeat. The last time we talked about this, a few weeks after episode 18 in August, the charges were dropped. And then 2 months later, a different situation happened. I mean, look, professional athletes need to be held accountable, period. Number 1. Because we've seen a lot of people that get passes, they're more likely to repeat. Remember Josh Brown, the kicker from the Seahawks and Giants from years ago? Remember, he had numerous incidents until he finally got caught. And then even Adrian Peterson, remember, he got slapped on the wrist after slap on the wrist. And first it was the hitting his son with the switch, remember? And then there was the other supposed domestic violence incident. There's been DUIs. And that's part of the problem with athletes getting a slap on the wrist is they're more likely to repeat over and over again. Hell, even go back. I'm going back a little bit to the 1980s. Whether you count this guy as an athlete or not, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, he had several domestic abuse incidents, but there's one that's notable involving his, at the time, girlfriend, Nancy Argentino. And apparently the abuse was such serious offense that it resulted in Nancy Argentino's death. But here we are back to this guy right here. You're talking about the 4th separate incident. And he's got to serve time because getting the benefit of the doubt because of his celebrity status or possibly throwing money to get the charges dropped is not working. It's just leading to the same situation happening over and over and over again. And we see this a lot of times with different professional athletes. We saw Josh Brown from the Giants. So look, the bottom line is people need to be held accountable, especially repeat offenders that are accused of this multiple times. Hold them accountable. They got to serve time because it's not going to stop. And for anybody out there, whether it's a man or a woman, from a figurative standpoint, know who you're getting in bed with, figuratively. Do your research on these people. Because for anybody, especially any women in the Miami area that might be able to get close to Gervonta Tank Davis, they should know his history full well at this point and know that getting involved anywhere near this guy is a bad idea. So there's just that part of it too I got to bring up. This is a serious subject too. And this goes not just with sports, but this goes for life too. You got to make sure you know who you're dealing with in life. And if there is a track record with a certain person, stay away from them. But yeah, this case right here now, he has a warrant from it. This, like I said, back in October. And ultimately, he's got to serve time for this incident. I mean, And then he has been stripped of his boxing belt, which is now vacant in the lightweight division, which is actually a good thing. At this point, he shouldn't even get his license to box again. At this point, to have this many incidents. So it's ultimately the sports too have to hold these guys accountable for their behavior too. Whether you're talking NFL, NBA, boxing, mixed UFC, tennis, FIFA, whatever organization that athlete's a part of that gets involved in these serious felonies, they need to also hold them accountable. And if it's serious enough, strip them of their license or suspend them for a season, depending on which sport you're talking about. So I'll say that this is why you got to take repeat offenders seriously, because they're more likely to repeat again. And I'll end it on that note. Now that we got that part out the way, we're moving on to the NFL. Let's talk about, before we get into the games, let's talk about the news that's come out the last couple days. Because yes, we're going to talk about the divisional round for sure. But we also have several teams have made new moves and have changed up at the head coaching position. We've had the New York Giants have officially hired John Harbaugh. They've got a 5-year deal. And then you also have the Atlanta Falcons got former Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski. And then you also got the Tennessee Titans got former Jets head coach and 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh back. And then you got the Miami Dolphins hired Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. Now, obviously, of these main four right there, the most notable one is the Harbaugh to the Giants. Because we're talking about a New York Giants organization that post Tom Coughlin, they've had mostly losing seasons, had 2 runs of the playoffs, years apart from each other. Once in 2016 where they got bounced by the Packers with first-year head coach Ben McAdoo, only to go 3-13 the next year, almost as if that season never happened. And then you had the 2022 year, the Giants made it first-year head coach Brian Daboll. Then the next year, they became one of the worst teams in the league, and it was almost like that season never happened. Now here are the Giants, after all those years, 2 playoff appearances stretched years apart, they hire former Super Bowl winning head coach John Harbaugh to try to turn the ship around. Now, in terms of bringing credibility and a respectable voice to the locker room, Harbaugh is an upgrade for the Giants for sure. And this at least gives them some potential. And there is the possibility, though, too, that maybe 1 or 2 Ravens players that are free agents coming up might go to the Giants. Isaiah Likely's been rumored to be a hot target to possibly sign with the Giants and follow Harbaugh. And that would certainly help Jackson Dart if that happens. But that's not till March, so we still got the rest of the NFL playoffs for that. But the point I'm getting is there's a lot of positive possibilities for Giants fans in their point of view. But also at the same time with Harbaugh, we got to remember this is a guy who has underachieved in Baltimore with the talent he's had. Remember, John Harbaugh has had the most double-digit fourth-quarter blown leads of any coach since 1993. And then one of those included was a loss to the Giants in 2022 where they blew a big lead. So we know the Baltimore John Harbaugh has a habit of not being able to keep his team in the game for 4 quarters. And that cost them 2 games last season that would have resulted in them winning the division. That being week 1 against Buffalo and then week 16 against the Patriots, both on Sunday night, where they had leads and blew it in the 4th. So there is that factor as well, that John Harbaugh has underachieved with the talent he's had. So you got to wonder with the Giants, I mean, even though I'm sure that they could be better, they'll be a better team, but how far will they go? Will they kind of just become middle of the pack like they were the last year of Harbaugh's tenure with the Ravens? Or will the Giants be a better team? But there's also the argument of the NFC East is a weaker division. There is the possibility that Harbaugh could end up is in a more favorable position with the Giants to win games because of that easier schedule in the NFC East. So, but we got to wait and see, though. But it is the most intriguing out of the 4 hires for sure. Then we get to the Atlanta Falcons, Kevin Stefanski. This is an interesting one. Now, Stefanski did, to his credit, get the Browns to the playoffs twice in 2020 and 2023. Considering how dysfunctional that Browns front office is, the fact that he could get them to the playoffs twice, that's actually a respectable accomplishment. And on paper, with him going to Atlanta, he could be in a better situation talent-wise, because the thing is, the Atlanta Falcons, they don't have any like superstars. And by superstars, I mean top jersey sellers, guy that can instantly sell tickets. They don't have that guy on their team right now. They have talented players. So for a guy like Kevin Stefanski, who led a dysfunctional Browns team to the playoffs twice, that could be a green flag right there that Stefanski could help the Falcons. But there's also the question of what do they got with their quarterback situation. Cousins is hitting the free agent market. Michael Penix Jr. was a long injury history. You're unsure about his future. That's going to be an interesting question. But we also got to wait for the offseason. And then for the Titans, Rob Saleh going to the Titans, it's like him going to the Jets all over again. At least that's what it feels like as of right now. It's like, geez Louise. He was so desperate for a head coaching job. He accepted the Titans offer. I mean, I don't know what type of money they threw at him, but that's hiring just... Look, I mean, granted, you can say that's... I mean, with the whole Jets thing, multiple factors played a role in Saleh not getting that team to its full potential. Lacking a real quarterback was one of them. But still, look at where the Titans are at. This is like, they're almost as dysfunctional as the Jets are at this point. I mean, yeah, there's a possibility they could have a good draft, but I don't know. I'm not really feeling that one. I feel it's going to be the same thing all over again. And for the Dolphins, Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator, it's going to be interesting because he's never been a head coach before. He did a really good job his 2 seasons as Packers defensive coordinator and made them one of the better defenses in the league. That is true. However, how's that going to translate over to him being a head coach where you got to be responsible for, player personnel, your depth chart? You got to look at offense and defense. So I don't know. I'm kind of iffy on how that one's going to work. I'm not saying it's going to be good or bad, but we got to wait and see. And that's crazy to think about because then there was something else that happened coaching-wise, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, let's talk about the divisional round games. We start off with the game that kicked off the festivities on Saturday between the Denver Broncos and the Buffalo Bills. And what a fun game this was, folks. The Bo Nix enigma was on full display here in this one. And yes, I say the enigma because Bo Nix has been one of those quarterbacks that 1 week he'll have a phenomenal performance and he'll play a key role in the Broncos offense cruising to victory. See the fourth quarter comeback against the Giants, the shellacking of the Cowboys as 2 games. But then there's other games like the Raiders game where the Broncos win, but they perform in such underwhelming fashion that you were into one. It felt more like a Tebow-ish type game. It's like, I swear, Bo Nix he's that mix of a guy who looks like a promising quarterback, and sometimes he has those Tebow-ish type games where they win in spite of him. But in this case, the Denver Broncos ultimately took care of business and beat the Buffalo Bills. And this was a good game. What is up, Grega? What is up? Thanks for stopping by. You had first half, it was the Denver Broncos show. They were up 20-10 going into the locker room. Nick Bonito got a strip sack, which helped play a role in the Broncos taking that 20-10 lead at the end of the first half. Then the second half, the Bills offense started to click, and they were able to move downfield. You even had Matthew Prater, the former Broncos kicker, hit a 50-yarder to send it to overtime. But then we get to overtime. The infamous, the crazy interception. I don't know, man. I'm going to have to let you guys discuss that one right there. Because that was a controversial call for sure, because I get the whole rule that you got to survive the ground, but usually you would think that would result in an incomplete pass, though, usually. And I know it's kind of the same Calvin Johnson, Des Bryant rule, or who's the tight end from Jesse James from Pittsburgh that one year. It was that rule right there, which, yeah, I mean, but it is what it is. And ultimately, the Broncos won this game. Now, Bills fans are probably going to feel like they got cheated and they got robbed. But at the same time, here's the thing. They had 5 total turnovers in the game. You still scored 30 points in spite of it. If you keep those turnovers, particularly the first 4 before OT, from happening, you potentially win that game. So you can't just solely blame it on that one call. I mean, you can debate the call, whether it was right or wrong, and say that it was the wrong call. We're allowed to have that discussion. But at the same time, we can't say that's the sole reason the Broncos won. They were up 20-10. And ultimately, Buffalo, if they get started in the first half, they get that offense going a little bit quicker, then ultimately they don't find themselves in that situation where a call could make the difference in the outcome. So, yeah, those turnovers, particularly that strip sack at the end of the first half, which helped give the Broncos the momentum going into the locker room at halftime, it changes. And then, unfortunately, too, for the Broncos, despite winning this game, the football gods unleashed its karma, because Bo Nix has an ankle injury that's putting him out for 4 to 6 weeks which means he's out for the remainder of the playoff run. After this phenomenal season, despite winning the game, Bo Nix goes down with an ankle injury. Now, Jarrett Stidham, who's been limited as a starter in his NFL career, has mostly been a backup, will get the start for them in the KFC Championship game, which we'll talk about later. But that's a tough predicament for the Broncos. Now, we know from history, it is possible a team could win with a backup quarterback. It's been done before. Eagles with Nick Foles, we remember that. Giants with Jeff Hostetler in the 90s. Hell, Ravens with Trent Dilfer. I mean, Kurt Warner with the Rams was technically a backup the first go-around, so it could happen. But the odds are stacked in this one, because you're bringing in Jarrett Stidham in the AFC Championship game under high pressure circumstances with no time to warm up. At least with Foles, he had a few games during the regular season. He had 3 to 4 games to get ready for the playoffs. Jeff Hostetler had more time to get ready for the Giants. Kurt Warner had the whole regular season to get the Rams in position. But in this case, with Jarrett Stidham, you're going to go right in that AFC Championship game against that New England team. That's going to be tough to overcome without even having the opportunity to get an easy start under his belt. But the Broncos do win, and it was an awesome game. But on the flip side, for the Buffalo Bills, this follows the trend of coming up short in big game situations. And the Buffalo Bills decided to follow that up Monday morning by parting ways with head coach Sean McDermott, who's been there since 2017. I mean, hey, we've seen this happen before. We know that sometimes a coach could be consistently getting a team to the playoffs. You could have a really strong roster, but sometimes you just need a change. You just need a change at the coaching helm, and that can make all the difference. We've seen it happen before a couple times. We saw with the Denver Broncos, with John Fox to Gary Kubiak. In between Super Bowl 48 and 49, they went one and done against the Colts led by Andrew Luck. They moved on from John Fox, brought Gary Kubiak in, and they had that same roster, went on to win a Super Bowl. We all know about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. After losing to the Eagles for the second straight year in the opening round, parted ways with Tony Dungy. They did the infamous coach trade with John Gruden, got him, which actually that was a win-win for both Dungy and the Bucs, because then Dungy got to go to Indianapolis with Peyton Manning as his quarterback and win a Super Bowl there, and then the Bucs went on to win a Super Bowl with Gruden with that same roster. So the Bills could possibly benefit from this situation if they hire the right guy to replace McDermott. Maybe they just need that change in the locker room, changing culture to help them get over the hump. Like I said, it worked for the Bucs once. It worked for the Broncos once. It could work for the Bills. But now the question is, who should the Buffalo Bills hire? Because I know people are talking about, there's a lot of there's speculation going around that maybe Brian DeBall could be the guy. Because the thing is, well, Brian DeBall is going to be in a better situation with better talent around him, and he's more of an upstate New York person, so he'll be closer to home. And I could see that. But you got to remember, Brian DeBall also had 2 losing seasons and got fired midway through his 4th season with the Giants. So there is that red flag as well. I mean, there's going to be, so there's that. I mean, there's also talk about Davis Webb, the Broncos pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Grant Udinski, if I'm pronouncing that right, Udinski, maybe him. He's the offensive coordinator for the Jaguars. So there's definitely potential names out there. And that Buffalo Bills head coaching job, there's probably going to be a lot of interviews because you're going to have a lot of offensive coordinators looking for that job. So that's going to be an interesting search right there because that, and I think the Eagles offensive coordinator opening are 2 of the most lucrative coaching openings going on right now in the NFL. But here's another possibility that I think would be the smartest move. Promote offensive coordinator Joe Brady to head coach. And Joe Brady's done has chemistry with Josh Allen. He knows how to build up this offense. And hey, who says it can't work? I mean, it could work. He's been there, right? How long has he been there? Joe Brady's been there a while, at least, and he's gotten that team, he built up a really strong offense. He was there last year when Josh Allen had the MVP season. I mean, here's a guy right here that he already knows the players, knows the offense. It makes perfect sense to just promote Joe Brady and make him the Bills head coach. Because he started as the quarterbacks coach 2022, then worked his way up to offensive coordinator. So it would make sense. But ultimately, that is up to the Buffalo Bills themselves. Right. And Bills needed defense and better offense receivers. Absolutely. And that's going to be one of the big spots that they got to look at in free agency and the draft because their defense is one of the flaws, too. Unlike the Seattle Seahawks, who absolutely decimated the San Francisco 49ers from the opening kickoff en route to a dominant win over their division rival, the San Francisco 49ers. Ladies and gentlemen, this right here was pretty much, this was the week 18 matchup with the volume cranked up by the Seahawks offense. That's what this was. And think about it. In 2 games in Seattle, the 49ers scored a grand total of 9 points. Let me repeat that. 9 points against the Seattle Seahawks. It just, right from Rashid Shaheed's kickoff, return to the house. Glad for him that he finally got to go to a real team. And then just from there, it was pure domination. It was a funny story. One of my coworkers who's a Niners fan tried to say they got cheated by a call early in the game that hurt their momentum, which I'm sorry, dude, but that's an excuse right there. That's an excuse. That's not a reason to get blown out this badly, all right? That's just a lazy cop-out. Because, yeah, there may have been a questionable call in the opening drive, but that questionable call did not cause you to give up 41 points and only score 6. That did not cause you to turn the ball over multiple times. That did not cause you to be unable to stop the run on defense. One questionable call on the Niners' opening offensive drive does not cause you to be unable to stop the run. Kenneth Walker had a field day with you. He had like an Emmitt Smith, LaDainian Tomlinson, Barry Sanders, Walter Payton-ish type performance on 19 carries for 116 yards and 3 touchdowns. Okay, let's set that straight. I mean, Kenneth Walker was automatic that they could just run the ball. He can cruise to victory all day. And they got 3 turnovers, 2 fumbles, and an interception from their defense. That really helped out too. I mean, dude, the 49ers, I'll say this, man. A lot of people don't talk about it, but remember when the Niners had the number 2 pick in the 2027, or not 2020, sorry, what was it? 2017 draft. They took Solomon Thomas. They could have easily took a quarterback. They could have went for Watson or Mahomes. Granted, Watson would have became the backfire in the long haul, but for the short term, they would have had something going good. And Mahomes, yeah, they missed out on a big opportunity there. So no offense to Brock Purdy, because Purdy is a good quarterback, but when you had the opportunity to potentially draft a franchise quarterback and you passed on it, looking back in the long term, that's going to sting, especially after you get embarrassed in the playoffs. This way, only scoring 6 points against the Seahawks. And there's the other factor too, man. Because going into this game, Sam Darnold had an oblique injury, which is around this area right here, your midsection. So, that can be a huge factor. That can limit your mobility and your ability. I mean, you would have thought if the Niners were bringing the blitz, which fortunately for Darnold, they did not, that would limit their ability to move and make plays, but not in this case. So that concern ended up being invalid with the way the Seahawks just destroyed the Niners. And you got to wonder with the Niners, are they kind of getting to the Sean McDermott Bills territory where maybe they need a fresh voice in the locker room despite their regular season success? And don't get me wrong, Kyle Shanahan is one of the better coaches, but this could be like a Tampa Tony Dungy situation. If you guys want to debate that in the chat, you're more than welcome to. And for Brock Purdy, man, look, he's a good quarterback, but in big game situations like this, that's not telling me that he's the long-term answer to get this team back to the promised land. I mean, he's a good quarterback in the regular season, but performances like this do not put you on the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino, tier for all-time quarterbacks. But credit to the Seahawks. It looks like this is the Legion of Boom 2.0. Now, I know they haven't embraced it yet, but this kind of is the Legion of Boom 2.0 when you look at the way they've been playing. It is. But you got to give big credit to this entire team. And unfortunately, though, for the Seahawks, Zach Charbonnet is out. And also left tackle Charlie Cross went down with an injury. Charbonnet is out. Charlie Cross, the tackle's questionable. So that's going to be interesting against the Rams. How does their run game? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, you still got Kenneth Walker, who is a really good running back. And when his game's on, he can rip apart defenses. So I still got the Seahawks having the advantage going into next week against the Los Angeles Rams, which, while we're on that subject, why don't we just talk about how the Rams got there? Because I think we all agree, unless you were a Seahawks fan, this was kind of a boring game. If you're a 49ers hater, you probably enjoyed it to a certain degree, but this game, for a lot of us, with all due respect to Bo and anyone else who's a Seahawks fan, this was the more interesting game for everyone else, particularly those who don't have a dog in the race. Rams and Bears. Oh, this was a fun game. This was hyped up to be a heavyweight showdown from a football standpoint, and in that perspective, it was. We had the second game of the divisional round weekend that went to overtime. And just like the Bills and Broncos, it was decided by a turnover. And it's funny because remember on the Sunday morning countdown show, I don't know if you guys saw or not, but it was on the Sunday morning show on the network. Me, Bo, Mitch talked about, and James from Steel by the Lake podcast. We talked about that. We talked how the Rams had one of the best rushing offenses, and the Bears had one of the worst passing or worst rushing defenses. And that kind of, but ironically, it was the Bears who actually outgained them in rushing yards. So, ironically, it was 3 interceptions by Caleb Williams that actually made a difference in the outcome of this game. So, it wasn't so much the Bears' run defense that you may have thought it was headed into it, because Kyron Williams was solid, but he wasn't amazing. Blaze, what is up? What is up? We got Blaze in the chat stopping by. And thanks for tuning in. And that's crazy because it was mostly Caleb Williams with the 3 picks, not really so much the run defense. I mean, Kyron Williams, 87 yards, 2 TDs was solid, but the turnovers by Caleb Williams made a big difference in this one, particularly the one in overtime, and particularly the one in the first quarter on the opening at the beginning of the game, because you start off on that opening drive. You're doing pretty, you go through, throw an interception, and then after the interception by Durant, all of a sudden the Rams go down the field, 14 plays, score the touchdown first. So there's your first interception that makes a huge difference. And then you had a turnover on downs where you tried to go for it in the second quarter and didn't convert. And then there was an interception in the third quarter where the Bears didn't score any points, mind you. So you're talking about several failed 4th down conversions and 3 interceptions that played a role in this game. And then Greg says, I don't get Caleb. He makes great throws, then throws a horrible INT. I mean, hey, that's football for you. We have a lot of quarterbacks who do that. And I guess sometimes they just become so desperate to make a play, and maybe they get a little overconfident in their abilities, and they try to force plays they shouldn't make. I mean, trust me, it happens. Caleb Williams is not the only one. It's just, I mean, that's my explanation, or my theory as to why a guy like Caleb Williams does that. And he certainly wouldn't be the first quarterback to do it. But then you get the Rams, and let's be real. And this was a cold weather game where the Rams offense wasn't particularly great either. And they weren't, I mean, they were good enough to win the game and score 20 points, but they weren't great. Like, you look, their best offense did come from Kyron Williams, but if you look at their receivers, who really had a standout game in this one? The real answer, nobody. Nobody really had a standout game. And I'll say this, the last pick, I got to give credit for that last pick in overtime, because that was an amazing play. Because then you get the Bears have the they convert the 4th down to go ahead. No, sorry, they convert 4th down to tie the game in the 4th quarter, 17-17. You're like, all right, Bears are still here. You're thinking that maybe they're going to win again. You're thinking the Chicago Bears team that's been following Rocky scripts all season, basically. You're thinking they're going to do it again, but then come 4th quarter, after that touchdown, then you get to it. Coin flip, Bears win. They start to move a drive downfield. You're like, here we go again. The script's playing out. And then Caleb Williams makes that horrible throw. Well, he makes at first what looks like a good throw, but it's intercepted. Who was it again that got the interception? I'm trying to remember his name, but he made a phenomenal diving play at a ball. It was Cam Curl. That's right. Curl made that amazing pick. So I got to give Cam Curl credit for that one right there, because that looked like a completion at first and a potential touchdown. But Cam Curl dove in front and got the ball for the Rams. Rams marched down the field. Now we're set. Rams, Seahawks, NFC Championship game. Boy, I can't wait. And as far as and here's a fun fact. We had technically two snow games on Sunday. There was some snow at Soldier Field, and there was also some snow in Foxborough. for the Patriots and Texans. Oh, my goodness. New England Patriots. Look, congratulations on making it back to the AFC Championship game. Salute to Mike Vrabel for the quick turnaround. And I loved what I saw the footage in the locker room when after the game, he's greeting all his players with high fives and hugs as they walk by. That was a nice little scene, nice little team morale booster. But despite the win, this had more to do with CJ Stroud than it did the New England Patriots offense. Not to take anything away from Drake May or to take anything away from the Patriots defensive players who made the plays, but CJ Stroud throwing 4 interceptions 1 week after having multiple fumbles and multiple picks indicates that it has more to do with CJ Stroud than it does that Patriots defense. With all due respect to the players on that defense, because they do have good players. You got Christian Gonzalez. You still got guys that can make plays. Robert Spillane, Marcus Jones, who had a pick 6, who had as well, that played a role in the outcome of this game. So you got some good players on that defense. Don't get me wrong, but it feels like CJ Stroud played a bigger role. You had Carlton Davis got 2 picks as well. So credit to Craig Woodson, Marcus Jones, and Carlton Davis for making the picks for them. But it also has to do with CJ Stroud too. And to be fair, the Texans defense did all right, all things considering. They did force a couple fumbles too, despite the loss in the final score. But if you take away that pick 6, the CJ Stroud makes a smarter decision. Then that takes 7 points off the board. You make it 21-16. Texans still have a shot. If you take away another interception, then that drive could potentially result in a touchdown, which completely changes the outcome of the game. So for that, I do have to look at CJ Stroud and wonder, what is he thinking? And it's crazy because this was a guy who was offensive rookie of the year. Or no, he was rookie of the year in 2023 when the Texans went from being a bottom feeder to winning the AFC South. And now here you are at the end of his 3rd season. It's almost like that rookie season never happened. It's almost like the Chicago Bears with Rex Grossman, the modern version of it, the way he's played recently. And that's insane to think about. You would have never thought in January 2024 we'd be giving a Houston Texans team comparisons to a Rex Grossman Bears team with CJ Stroud as the quarterback. If someone would have said, you go back in a time machine January 2 years ago and you tell them, oh, wait, the Houston Texans as of January 26 have parallels to the Bears with Rex Grossman. People would look at you like you're crazy. Like, what? Did you not see that rookie CJ Stroud? What are you talking about? But that goes to show how far CJ Stroud's fallen off. I mean, that's crazy. God damn. But for the New England, but at the same time, look, the New England Patriots are a good team. I mean, Rondé Moore Stevenson was the star player, was one of the stars on offense. And Drake May, despite the turnover, still threw 3 touchdowns too. So, yeah, he had multiple turnovers and fumbles, but he also still threw 3 touchdowns and made enough plays to help the Patriots win this game. So it was like, yeah, it was a mixed bag game-wise for Drake May in terms of giving up the ball, in terms of throwing touchdowns. But, so it was total 3 TDs, 3 turnovers, 1 pick, and 2 lost fumbles. But despite that, Drake May still did good enough to help his team win the game. Something that CJ Stroud could learn from because, I don't know, man. I don't know what happened, dude. Like, did he get I think he got a contract extension after his rookie year and then just fell off from there. But the difference with quarterbacks here in this battle was Drake May still threw 3 touchdown passes despite the 2 fumbles and the interception. And ultimately the Patriots, and plus the weather conditions did kind of favor the Pats in this one. So I also got to give them props there too, because the Patriots did an excellent, they did their thing. I mean, you still got Rondé Moore Stevenson still. I mean, he's the lead back on this team. Travion Henderson's obviously the number 2 back. So obviously, there's that factor right there. So you got a pretty decent offense, and you got a pretty good core on defense. So now we're set. We're getting ready for the conference championship games coming up. It's going to be interesting. We got an NFC West showdown, which was the best division in football, and a rematch from both the 2013 and 2015 regular season conference championship games. So we'll be right back in a minute. We'll talk about it. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. And back, folks, after a quick break. We discussed the divisional round. And now, with that being said, now that the divisional round has been settled, we are down to the final four for the NFL season. And this is what it comes down to, folks. It's now set up. You got the New England Patriots going against the Denver Broncos in the AFC Championship in Denver at Mile High Stadium. We've seen this play out before. We remember just a decade ago, we had two showdowns between the Patriots and Broncos at Mile High. It was the Broncos with Peyton Manning and company versus the Brady Belichick-led Patriots. And here we are, a decade later, going into Super Bowl 60. It's the same two teams fighting for the opportunity to play in the Super Bowl that they were in Super Bowl 50. And it's in Mile High again. But here's going to be the biggest factor. Bo Nix is out. You're going to have to rely on Jarrett Stidham to go against that Patriots team. And that's going to be tough because Stidham has only played a handful of games, and he hasn't really done anything to truly impress during those starts. I mean, he's limited as a starter in the NFL. And now he's going in the conference championship game, elimination situation. I got to favor the Patriots in that one for that part of the matchup. And yes, the Denver Broncos have a really good team. They're one of the best teams. They're number 5 in sacks throughout the playoffs. But who leads for most sacks in the playoffs? It's the New England Patriots. So if Jarrett Stidham is in the pocket, he gets a little reckless. He could be getting dropped numerous times by that Patriots defense that's recorded 9 sacks thus far through this playoff run. And not just that, but if he's getting pressured and he's making careless throws, that could bode well for the Patriots. So I lean toward New England in this case. And plus, they've also gotten 4 interceptions too, which they're tied with the Rams for most interceptions by teams in the playoffs right now, which we'll get more to the Rams part of it in a second. But so there's one big advantage that the Patriots have. And then when it comes to the Denver Broncos defense, hey, this defense is doing really good too. They've gotten 3 sacks and 2 INTs this entire time. So that one game against Buffalo, that's where they were at. They got 3 sacks and 2 takeaways in that game. So we know the Denver Broncos are a really good defense too. That could be the advantage because Drake May, despite winning 2 weeks, Drake May has been prone to making mistakes and coughing it up, if you will. So I could see that also benefiting the Broncos. It's even without Bo Nix, it actually could be a closer matchup than some people think. But ultimately, I feel like the main thing that's going to decide this game is Jarrett Stidham's inexperience in these big game situations. That's going to come back to cost the Broncos in the end, and the Patriots will move on to return to the Super Bowl under the new regime, under this current first order version of the Patriots with Mike Vrabel. So we'll probably have that happening right there. So for the Broncos, man, and it was kind of a shame but we don't know what's going to happen though. We still got to wait and see. Because the Broncos have an amazing team. It's just that going from Bo Nix to Jarrett Stidham's the one main thing I'm sold on. Because if you take that away, this could be a favorable matchup for either team. But there's that factor right there, not having Bo Nix, that's going to make a difference. Like, I think if this injury would have happened late in the season and Jarrett Stidham would have at least had a week or 2 to get acclimated with the offense, then maybe I think the Broncos could stand more of a chance. But we'll still have to see on that one because either way, I'm expecting a more of a lower scoring game, kind of similar to what happened with the Bears and Rams last week. I'm expecting a similar type of game where You don't get a whole lot of points. I mean, because the Broncos defense are going to be tough to move the ball against. But then again, Drake May, we saw against Houston, they still got 3 touchdown passes despite fumbling 4 times and despite throwing, and 2 of those being turnovers and throwing a pick. So we know based off what Houston did, this could end up being, that Drake May is prone to making mistakes. But I think this is probably going to be like the Texans game for the Patriots all over again. And I wouldn't be saying that if it were Bo Nix, but because it's Jarrett Stidham, I'm a little bit concerned about where they're going to go. But I'll take the Patriots in this one. So I got the New England Patriots going back to the Super Bowl. Then we got the NFC Championship game. It's only fitting that this came down to 2 teams in the NFC West. The NFC West was the best division in football all year, and it's only fitting that now 2 teams from that division are competing for an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. That being the Seattle Seahawks and the Los Angeles Rams. And now, man, we saw back last time these 2 teams played in Seattle. It was earlier this season on the Thursday night where the Seahawks had that incredible comeback, followed by a game-winning decision in overtime to go for it. This is going to be interesting this time around because the biggest difference between the 49ers and the Rams is the Rams can find ways to move the balls against the Seahawks, despite the fact the Seahawks have an excellent defense, where we kind of saw with the Niners, they couldn't really move against them at all. They couldn't. But on the other hand, the Rams can. The Rams beat them the first time at home. They scored 21. And even in the overtime loss, they dropped 37 points. So this Rams offense has a better shot against the Seahawks than the Niners do. Because you got Matthew Stafford's been having a phenomenal season. Potential candidate for MVP. Potentially. And then you got the Seattle Seahawks, basically the Legion of Boom Part 2. You got DeMarcus Lawrence, who still fills a role as a leader. You got other guys in that mix, such as you got Leonard Williams, who's leading the way, 7 sacks. You got Ernest Jones, still a solid piece. Kobe with a C. Bryant. You still got a lot of pieces on that defense. The Seahawks have 3 turnovers throughout this run so far. I mean, they got 3 turnovers against the Niners. So they're also a really good defense. But the Rams, don't count out the Rams offense. Do not count them out at all. You still got Matthew Stafford leading the way. Kyron Williams still a solid option in the ground game like we saw against the Bears. So, and the Rams are still 4th for most yards. So they have one, they're still doing good. And to be fair, the Rams have gotten 4 turnovers throughout the playoffs. They got 3 against the Bears. And Sam Darnold is prone to making turnovers. So that's an interesting matchup on the flip side, too. You're like, wait a minute. Yeah, hold your horses, folks. The Rams defense, particularly against Sam Darnold, could make plays. So then there's that fact. You remember Cam Curl interception. And you're talking about a really good Rams team here. And again, granted, they did have a tough time against the Panthers too, but the Rams still did enough to win that game. So I'll be curious as to how this is going to play out here. But you got to remember too, the other factor is it's in Seattle. You got the 12th man. The Rams have already had to play twice on the road, and going a 3rd time on the road can sometimes come back to bite you. See the Philadelphia Eagles in 2008 against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, that's not the only reason they lost that game, but that's just in one example. See the Tennessee Titans in 2019 Or see the Jets in 2009 and 2010, back-to-back years, they had to try to go 3 straight. They only got to the conference championship. But back to this game itself, though. The point is, though, there is a home field advantage for the Seahawks. But, this looks like I got to say, this is probably going to be a close game in this one. As of now, I'm leaning toward the Rams winning either by a field goal or winning in overtime. But either way, I feel like this is going to be a close game. It's going to be something for us to keep our eye on. So we just got to wait and ultimately see how it plays out. But while we're still on the subject of NFL picks, reminder that later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Hardcore Sports Network, you're going to have myself and Agent Warrior X previewing the conference championship matchup. So we'll kind of go over it from there, and you also get a different point of view. So that'll also come tonight as 8 as well, where I'll reiterate some of the points I made. You'll also get an additional point of view from Agent Warrior X tonight on Pick'ems. So as of now, I got the Rams and Patriots in the Super Bowl again, but we got to wait and see how it plays out. Either way, these are going to be fun conference championship games. And then after that, by next week, we'll have our Super Bowl matchup set. We'll be ready to talk about it. But with the NFL season winding down, that also means the NBA starts to pick up a little bit. That's right, folks. I mean, we saw last week, we talked about the Trae Young to the Wizards trade. Trae Young is now a Washington Wizard. But there was a historical feat that was accomplished as well. So let's get into that. Kevin Durant now passes Dirk Nowitzki for all-time career points. So it happened last week. Durant passed Nowitzki later in the week. He now has 31,562 career points, and now he's 6th all-time on the NBA's scoring list. So, yeah, now he's just, you got on that list, you got Michael Jordan 5th, Kobe Bryant 4th, Karl Malone 3rd, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar 2nd, and LeBron James 1st. I'll show you guys the list real quickly if you guys want a quick peek of it yourself. So here's what the all-time scoring list looks like. That's where KD ranks. He passed Dirk Nowitzki, which in that regard, it's another accomplishment for Kevin Durant. It goes to show you, it does prove his greatness to some degree. Look, Kevin Durant, whether you like the guy or not, regardless of how you feel about him, he is one of the best players in NBA history. Probably a top 15. Top 10, I'm not too sure about, but KD is a top 15. Now, does this tell the whole story? No, it doesn't. Because there's also the story of he was the number 2 guy on the Warriors, the 2 times he won championships with Steph Curry. There is also the story of Kevin Durant played in a more offensive-friendly era where that favors three-point shooting, and that played a role in Kevin Durant getting that high on the all-time scoring list. So there is that factor as well. So it's not just, but Kevin Durant is still a legend regardless, and this right here solidifies his claim as one of the greatest of all time. And he passed a hell of a name in Nowitzki, too, to get it. So it's just another accolade on KD's already Hall of Fame resume. You have a finals MVP, 2 finals. How many All-Star games did Kevin Durant have? It's got to be in the double digits, right? 15-time All-Stars. 2-time finals MVP, a regular season MVP, and the 2008 Rookie of the Year. And now you're just adding this, and along with 4 scoring titles. That's an impressive resume right there. So whether you like the guy or not, whether you're a fan of what he does with his decisions and how he handles going from team to team, at the end of the day, Kevin Durant is one of the best of all time, and congrats to him on this accomplishment. But while Kevin Durant has another accolade added to his resume, unfortunately, last night we got some bad news coming out of the NBA last night in the Miami Heat versus Golden State Warriors, Jimmy Butler revenge game. Unfortunately, Jimmy Butler went down during the game on a collision. He needed help getting off the bench from Gary Payton II. And who was the other one that helped him up? But he needed help getting off the bench. He clearly couldn't get up after he went down. And he had the MRIs today. It's confirmed he has a torn ACL. He's out for the season, man. Which is a shame for the Warriors because Golden State was still the 8th seed in the Western Conference as of now. And they're going to need all the help they can get in that competitive conference. And now here you're talking about Jimmy Butler going down with a season-ending injury. Mind you, you're talking about a Jimmy Butler who's 36 years old. He's getting to the twilight years of his NBA career. Now you're expecting him to come back from a torn ACL. That's tough to ask for out of him. You remember, this is kind of similar to what happened with Kobe with his Achilles injury. It happened late in his career. He just never was truly the same player again. And the Jimmy Butler, man, it's kind of a shame because here's a guy who, to his credit, has been one of the better players in the NBA over the past decade. He made one Most Improved Player in 2015. He made his first All-Star game in 2016. He led 2 finals runs where the Miami Heat fell short both times. And you're talking about, you got 6-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA, a Most Improved Player, an Eastern Conference Final MVP. I mean, he is one of the better players of his era. Maybe he's not the top guy, but Jimmy Butler's still one of the guys in the NBA, one of the main guys. And now here you go. He's going down with a season-ending injury. This at 36 years old, it's going to be hard to come back from that and still be the same player. And we were already starting to see some small signs of decline from Jimmy, even late in that Miami run. And so it's a shame for the Golden State Warriors. But this is also a reason why, if you're the Warriors, you have to get younger too. I think Jonathan Kuminga can be the guy of the future. Build around him. But the bottom line is, if you're the Golden State Warriors, what you really need is to start build up for the future. Because Steph Curry isn't going to be around forever. Draymond Green isn't going to be there forever. Klay Thompson's already went off to the Mavericks where he looks like a shell of his former self. Now, this is also a reminder for the Warriors. But maybe, who knows? Maybe with Jimmy Butler being out, maybe a young player from the Warriors does step up in his absence as that part of that next man up mentality, and they actually do end up doing, and end up shining. Maybe somebody on that roster does shine. Maybe Kuminga steps up more than, or somebody else. Because it's not just that right there. Look at their roster. Who was it that's on Miami? You got Kuminga. You got a one Brandon Podziemski. Maybe he's the shooting guard. Maybe he steps up for them. But you need somebody on that Warriors roster, a younger player, to step up. Maybe a guy, somebody to step up. Kuminga's probably going to be the main guy. But you're also looking at possibly you want a guy like a Podziemski, however it's pronounced, to step up, because you need ultimately someone. You need that. You need that next man up that's going to actually help your team. So that's important right there. But we have to wait and see those. But for Jimmy Butler, I feel like this is kind of the beginning of the end, man. Injuries ultimately happen. They're part of the game. But you got to adjust. And the Warriors, it's been time to get younger now. They're still trying to hold on to the core they got. They want Steph Curry and company to ride out their career. And, now credit to Steph. He's really the last of those loyal players that stayed with the team. But we got to see where they go from there. For Jimmy Butler, say what you want to say about the guy, whether you like him or not. Prayers up to Jimmy Butler on a full recovery. And we'll see. And hopefully he does make a full recovery, at least for his own health's sake. Now, I don't know if he's going to come back and be the same player that he was, but we got to wait and see. Because he's not coming back this season. If he'd probably be coming back at the start of next season. But we got to wait and see on that one. But there actually is one more NBA-related subject I want to talk about. Because there was a YouTube short I did about Ja Morant possibly getting traded. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to share the screen from that YouTube short and pause it for you guys. I'm going to show the trades that potentially could happen. So this is from a YouTube short I did of a graphic from IG, from NBA Trade Center. They often do a lot of mock trades. And here were several mock trades that give me 1 second. Let's make sure we got it. So let's go through this. I'll share the screen with you guys in one moment. Here we go. So here was the first proposed one. Potentially Ja Morant to the Bucks, with the Bucks giving up Kevin Porter Jr., Kyle Kuzma, Gary Harris, and a 2031 first-round pick. Now, as far as this scenario goes, for the Grizzlies, that's not a good package for them. Kevin Porter Jr. could be a good piece. That's kind of more of an experimental run, though, because if you're the Grizzlies and you ultimately feel like you got to move Ja, why not get a guy like Kevin Porter Jr. who has potential and just see what he can do? Because you don't really have a lot to lose if this scenario goes through. You're already losing your star player. You're not going to be that great in the short term. Why not try with the talent you get in return and see what happens? But I still feel like you should at least get another pick in return. Try to get at least 2 picks in return. So I don't think that would be best for the Grizzlies, because you're not getting that pick till 2031, if that at all. But to be fair, you could always swap that for another pick in the near future as well. But I think in that scenario, you should at least try to get, if you're the Grizzlies, you should try to get at least 2 picks out of a Ja Morant trade if you go through with it. Now, for Ja to the Bucks, if Ja and Giannis could stay healthy, they could work their way up the Eastern Conference standings and at least be in the playoffs. But Giannis and Ja alone isn't going to win a championship for them. Granted, this would be kind of exciting to see. I like the idea of Giannis and Ja Morant as teammates. That would be fun to watch, but history has taught us just because a duo is fun to watch does not make them contenders right away. You see Carmelo Anthony, Allen Iverson in Denver. That was a fun regular season duo, but that didn't do anything for that duo come playoff time. Because both times they got bounced in the opening round. First by the San Antonio Spurs in 2007, then 2008 by the Lakers. Another exciting duo that you did have Kyrie and Luka, who did make a finals run together, and then ultimately Luka was traded before it ever fully materialized. I'm trying to think, who else is an exciting duo? Yao and T-Max, another. Actually, I compare the prospect of more Giannis and Ja more to Yao and T-Mac. Big guy, smaller guy. Yao and T-Mac were fun to watch. They were an exciting team in Houston, but, they were a draw, but come playoff time, it didn't materialize, in part due to injuries, because you're talking about 2 guys and Yao T-Mac that when healthy were excellent, but also had their history of injuries. Now, in John Morant's case, he kind of fits a little bit of that T-Mac role of potentially being at risk of getting injured. Now, Giannis, to his credit, though, we know he has that chip under his belt, but I could see if something were to happen similar to this, Giannis and Ja, that would definitely boost Bucks home ticket sales and boost ratings on their home games or on their games, period, that are televised. But I don't think that's going to help them win a championship. And for the Grizzlies, I feel like you got to get another pick in the near future. And then you got this one with Ja Morant to the Nets. This would also lead to the Grizzlies getting Cam Thomas, Terrence Mann, Day'Ron Sharpe, and a 2028 first-round pick, which they got from the Sixers. But, I mean, for Ja, you're basically putting him in almost a very similar situation that he's in Memphis, where he's the main guy carrying the team. He's the main guy leading the way. That doesn't really work there. Now, for the Grizzlies, you do get Cam Thomas, Terrence Mann, Day'Ron Sharpe, and another pick in return. That's a decent package, but that doesn't move the needle for either team. To me, this is a lose-lose for both teams in this case. Well, kind of a lose-lose. For Ja, this would help make the Nets a better team, and maybe they'd be but there's the big if. Ja Morant would have to stay healthy in this scenario for it to possibly work out. And I don't know if that's going to be the case. That's the big if. But even then, if he does stay healthy, you're talking about reaching the playoffs as this Nets team ceiling. And as one of the lower seeds, meaning you're going to have a tough go in the opening round against either, if they do somehow make it to the play-in and win a playing game, you go against possibly either the Pistons or Knicks in the opening round. I don't know how that would work out. So I just think, it's kind of just putting him in a similar situation. Now, for the Grizzlies, yeah, they get a few decent players in return, but that's not really a needle mover for them. So I don't really like that trade for either team. And then last but not least, you got this proposed trade, Ja Morant to the Bulls. You got potentially Ja's contract to the Bulls. In return, you get Kobe White, Patrick Williams, Javon Carter, and a first-round pick from the Bulls. I mean, Kobe White, when healthy, that could be a decent piece right there. And Ja to the Bulls, well, he would have Vucevic, but Vucevic is a bit of an overrated player. Let's be honest. I mean, Nikola Vucevic is one of the most overrated players in the NBA. Let's face it. Just call it how it is. So I don't really know about this one either. I mean, yeah, Ja and Vucevic, that could maybe help their odds of going from play-in team to potentially making the playoffs, but I don't see them going very far in the playoffs. And to be fair, Ja Morant would help the Bulls with ticket sales for their home games, but yeah, this isn't going to turn them into a championship contender. And for the Grizzlies, look, all of these three trades right here, I don't really see this helping the Grizzlies in the short term. I think in a Ja Morant trade, the Grizzlies need pieces in return. They need multiple picks at least, not just, that's not just role players, because for the Grizzlies, you're in the Western Conference. It's a lot different story out west than it is in the East. And yeah. Now, in the Bulls case, really all three teams proposed in this case. The Bucks, Bulls, and Nets. You're talking about the Bulls are kind of mediocre. You're also talking about, it's the NBA Trade Center from IG. You're talking about that Bulls one right there. All right. Bulls, you go from probably playing team to making the playoffs as their ceiling. And then you get the Nets one. You're going to have to hope Ja Morant stays healthy just for them to even make the playoffs in that scenario. You're going to have to hope they make the playoff. you're going to have to hope Ja stays healthy just to even make the playoffs. In that scenario, they'd be giving up to Cam Thomas, Terrence Mann, Day'Ron Sharpe. That's not really a great scenario right there. And the one with the Bucks giving up Kevin Porter, Kyle Kuzma, Gary Harris. It would be fun to see Giannis and Ja Morant play together. That's a fun duo right there. But to me, it also depends on, all these scenarios depend on whether Ja can stay healthy or not. And for the Grizzlies, if you're going to give up Ja Morant, you got to get something in return. This team's 11th in the Western Conference, and you're in a loaded conference with a ton of good teams. You got the Denver Nuggets. You got, of course, the defending champ, Arku's OKC Thunder. You got the Minnesota Timberwolves. You got the San Antonio Spurs emerge into contention. You got the Rockets are still kind of that dark horse team. The point is the Western Conference is loaded with talent, and particularly the Spurs and Thunder with young talent in particular. That's what you got to watch out for. And even though the Lakers aren't necessarily championship contenders, they're still a formidable force in the Western Conference with Luka Doncic there. So you're in a tough uphill battle. If you're the Grizzlies, you need picks in return to rebuild for the future. You kind of need a similar package to what happened when they traded Pau Gasol to the Lakers. Just hope that this time the package in return, you get the pieces to help you get over the hump. That's really what the Grizzlies would need in this case. Because remember, when they did trade Pau Gasol, they got in return the rights to Marc Gasol, who ended up being one of the better centers of his era. And they did make a conference finals run one year, and they did have an upset over the San Antonio Spurs as the 8th seed in 2011. So that rebuild did work to a certain extent. Hence why I say if the Grizzlies do trade Ja, you got to get the right pieces in return and just hope that it works out a little bit better than it did the last time you traded a superstar. So, but we still got to wait and see. We still got a few more weeks for the trade deadline. And who knows, anything could happen. And we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Ja Morant, he missed a few games there earlier in the year. He played for the first time since January 2nd yesterday, dropping 24 against the Magic. So we know that Ja Morant can still play and can still go when he's healthy, but we got to wait and see on that one, man. So, but it's going to be interesting. NFL winding down, NBA picks up. Real quickly before we go, I'm just going to do a quick predictions for tonight's games. We got 76ers versus Suns. If the Sixers start their guys, I'll give the Sixers, but I could see the Suns winning that because as of lately, Dylan Brooks, Devin Booker, they've been doing pretty solid. I think Suns got a better end of that trade with the Rockets than we initially thought at the time. So that could be a toss-up if all the guys play there. I'll lean toward the Sixers, assuming their guys play, but that could go either way. Then you got the Bulls and Clippers. If Kawhi Leonard and James Harden are both playing, I'll give it to the Clippers, but that depends on if they're playing. Rockets, Spurs, I'll go with the Spurs in that one. And then T-Wolves, Jazz. Give me the Timberwolves over the Jazz. And Arku confirmed Jalen Green is back tonight for the Suns. So, I think it ultimately comes down to the Sixers if their guys play or not. Because, I mean, we know that 2 weeks ago they fell short against the Denver Nuggets without Nikola Jokic. And now you're going against the Suns, who are kind of a sleeper team in the West. I mean, not really. I don't see them as contenders, but they're kind of the team people tend to underestimate. On any given game night, if you underestimate the Suns, they could beat you. So we'll have to see on that, though. But, hey, man, it's just a call slate of games for the regular season, man. So I think that's all we got for you guys as far as content to discuss today. So I wanted to come on here early so I'll get that rant of the week about athletes and domestic violence out the way. We talked about the divisional round, little mini preview, the conference championship. And later tonight, folks, at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Hardcore Sports Network. Your boy Nikki Stees, Agent Warrior X going live. We're going to be talking about the conference championships there. So you'll get my point of view and Agent Warriors X's point of view later tonight. And if you haven't seen the pick'ems yet, here's what you'd be missing out on.
I could see at least two teams missing out with a winning record. Houston and Kansas City.
Really, it's going to be a battle of the two offenses in this case. So I predict a high-scoring game.
This is what they get for firing Brian Flores. You remember that 2021 season when the Dolphins won 7 in a row with Brian Flores just to get booted out of the playoffs and then terminated on Black Monday. Why would they even do that?
Offseason in terms of talent-wise, when they got Tyreek Hill, so they had the right talent the following year. If they had the exact same offseason with Brian Flores as the coach, how much different would have it gone? I don't know if we necessarily would have.
It would have been way different if Brian Flores.
It would have been better.
It would have been different with Brian Flores because he has a winning culture defense, but the offensive was pretty much god-awful.
Back in, like, say, Madden, the original Madden 25 franchise mode, it would have been generated during one of the off seasons. You get a random, like, Kurt Warner coming out of retirement or Ray Lewis coming out of retirement storyline. And that will be later tonight at 8 p.m. on the Hardcore Sports Network, where we'll talk about the divisional round matchups, the conference championships, briefly go over memories from some of the greatest moments and games in conference championship history. So with that being said, until later tonight, it's your boy Nikki Stees signing off. Arku, Grega, anyone else who stopped by, thanks for stopping by and showing your support. Hope to catch you in the chat later tonight. But if not, have a great rest of your night. Until later, peace.